Good morning. Is it working? Yeah, are we good? Except for my mask is hanging rakishly off the side here. Well, I'm going to leave it like that for now. I think I'm on mute. Maybe I'm not. Oh, are we good? Yeah. I think I'm on. Now I'm really on. Well, first of all, welcome and thank you for everybody who, props to everybody who made the trip out on a day like this, sort of hydroplaning down the upper levels highway. My name is Bruce Grierson, and it's my great pleasure and privilege to be scrubbing in for Reverend Ron this morning for you with Service Associate Rebecca Lindley. And I was thinking about it kind of feels like we got given the keys to the car for the weekend. Where do you want to go?
I think we should actually go back in time, Bruce. And I'm thinking we should go back to well before 2019, before this masked life, pandemic life happened. Is that good?
Yep. Okay, we're going to work with that idea of going back in time today. It's part of our Holding History theme that we're carrying on for the whole month. And before I throw it over to you to do the chalice lighting, I just want to say, as a bit of housekeeping about the way the spirit rooms are working now. So there's been a kind of a change. So we used to do it, we would get 2/3 of the way through the service, and then people would decamp to the spirit rooms, and then we try to summon people from all, various kinds of, and now we've decided that we basically do the whole service right up to the end. We close, we have the circle, and then people go to the spirit rooms. And then that way you're not kind of always listening for a call to come back. Spend as much time as you need there, and then you come down for coffee. So just that's the way it's going to go now, and you let us know whether you think that's working for you. Anyway, it's great to be here, and over to you.
All right, thank you. To open our service today, we're going to light the chalice, and we're inviting Marcia and Jim Stevenson up to come and light the chalice. They're going to have to light the little candle too, just flagging that. Marcia and Jim have been part of our North Shore Unitarian community for many years, since the early 1980s. And when asked, what were you looking for when you first came to North Shore Unitarians? This is what Marcia said. She said, as a young mother of a 3-year-old, I had followed up on a newspaper listing and enrolled in a Building Your Own Theology class while she was pregnant with their second child. She was looking for religious education free of dogma for her children, and she definitely found that in Lynn Sabarin's programs. Finding the adult programs for herself was an unexpected bonus. And Jim added, I was a follower, but he found a dogma-free replacement for his Lutheran upbringing. They say North Shore Unitarians is a place where they find interpersonal connection at a much deeper level than what's possible in everyday conversation, and they find support for their life's journey. Thank you, Marcia and Jim, for all you've done and you continue to do for our community. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. Thank you. Welcome. This is the North Shore Unitarians, as we know, where our mission is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. So let's sing Please rise and embody your spirit as you're able and join in singing 3 songs. The words will be up on the screen and in your order of service at home.
Bright morning star arising, bright morning star arising, bright morning star arising. Day is breaking in my soul. Rise up from morning slumber, rise up from morning slumber, rise up from morning slumber. Day is rising in my soul. To heaven, oh lift your voice to heaven, oh lift your voice to heaven. Day is breaking in my soul. Did I skip a verse? Rise up and hear your calling. 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 Day is breaking in my soul. Now we'll do, oh lift your voice to heaven. Oh, lift your voice to heaven. Oh, lift your voice to heaven. Oh, lift your voice to heaven. Day is breaking in my soul. We'll build this faith together. 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 Day soul. Bright morning star. Bright morning star arising. Bright morning star arising. Bright morning star arising. Day is breaking in my soul. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move now into a wonderful song known by, I think, probably by all of you, Building Bridges. So we're doing this sort of round. So I will start, along with the basses and tenors in the choir. So all tenors and basses, feel free to join in with the choir tenors and basses. When I start then, the next time around, anyone who wants to can join with me. Okay. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Won't you reach out to me? Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Won't you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends we can make such a sweet harmony. Yeah. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Won't you reach out to me with all our voices and all our visions? When we can move in the sweet harmony. One more time. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Won't you reach out to me with all of our voices and all of our visions? Friends, we can make such a sweet harmony. Now the last one we're going to do, I don't think you guys know, but just join in with us. Any part you want. You can sing along with me. Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you, and sing your spirit song. Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you, and sing your spirit song. Yeah, it could be swaying from side to side. It could be moving your arms. Walk with you, and sing your spirit song. One more time. Courage. Gee, I love watching you dance. My friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you, and sing your spirit song.
Well, now that we are all here in body and mind and spirit, I invite you to join me in an attitude of prayer. Let us acknowledge each other, the deep humanity of each other, as we gather here on the unceded land of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam people. This land was in good hands for thousands of years, lest we forget. And I want to keep the theme of remembrance going today, since tending the stories of our ancestors, and really the stories of everyone who laid down possibilities for all of us, is the focus this month. And to that end, I'd like to lean on some of the words of Reverend Scott Taylor of the First Unitarian Church of Indianapolis. For history that holds and heals us, for the stories of heroism that inspire our own, for the faces of loved ones who have passed, in whose images we see our better selves, for reminders of those who paved the path on which we travel and blessed us with advantages we didn't earn all on our own. These memories do not live in the past. They carve the contours of our present. They throw themselves into our futures and lure us into building a better life for all. They are here today. Look, listen, let them in. Amen. Laura, do we have milestones today? All right.
I think I'm on. Am I on? Nope. Yes, I am. There we go. So this morning, I do have some milestones. For we know that a burden shared is a burden halved, and a joy shared is a joy doubled. And today we are celebrating Belle Izzat's 80th birthday, which I believe she said was on Friday. So happy birthday, Belle. And also, David O'Hanlon has moved to Amica. And if anyone is interested in being in touch with him, in fact, he would love to be in touch with folks from the congregation. So please come see me or Joanna Vaughn about we have some information with his new address and whatnot. So thank you. Those are our milestones today.
Thank you, Laura. Well, as we're talking about stories of the people who came before us and laid down possibilities for us, I asked Rebecca this week, the prompt question was, as we get older, does that necessarily mean we get wiser?
I love these questions. Actually, my immediate response was, I think everyone else gets wiser, but I don't think I do. Of course, it's harder to have insights about your own growth and your own aging and your own wisdom compared to others. So it's funny, because just the other day, I was having a lovely conversation with a colleague. It was an older colleague. John is probably 20, 25 years older than me, more years of life than me. And it just struck me as that. John is so wise. And in the conversation, he shared a few stories. We had about an hour and a half. We were traveling together. And he shared a few stories. And they were just punctuated by these sage thoughts. And I walked away, I wished for that wisdom that we never feel we have. And I will return to that conversation with him for sure. As I thought more about growing older, and I'll say older, because that can apply to everyone, even the young people here, because we all grow older. There's probably something golden in that, right? That when we're younger, we feel like we're young and everyone else is old, like it's binary. And of course it's not, right? It's a continual process. There's no line of separation. We're all learning and growing older. I think as we get older, we waste less time and energy on things that don't matter. And we waste less emotion, right? Doesn't mean we're not emotional, we are. But one of the wisdoms I think we learn, and some of us are slower to learn this than others, is that some things are just not worth spending time and emotional energy on, whereas other things are. Last time I was here, I spoke about it's new for me to learn to put contact lenses in. At the ripe age of 50, it's a new skill. I'm learning to put contact lenses in my eyes. I think it's actually a good thing for all of us to keep learning things new in our lives. This morning, as I was struggling to put the right one in, I could feel this like frustration rising. And I paused, and then it just dissipated. Like, just that frustration was gone. And I don't think I was conscious about it, but I think I just realized that's not worth the emotional energy. And I know 20 years ago, that would not have been how it was. That would have built up and would have exploded somewhere, like silly. That decision-making about what's worthy of our time and energy and attention, and what we need to remain curious about and passionate about, what to put our time into, I think that becomes easier for most of us as we get older. We have a greater sense of who we are and what and who we want around us. We develop more or deeper gratitude, forgiveness. We probably have less anger, and we probably have fewer worries that are unnecessary. In our culture, there's this kind of negative attitude about getting older. But, I mean, for most of us, I think as we get older, that changes dramatically, right? There's a part of us that just looks forward to having more wisdom and calm. And I can't end this little piece around the thoughts about getting older without sharing a story about Alma. Alma was this lovely African-American woman that I met. I was in my 20s. I met her in the healthcare setting. And I was in my 20s, so I would have described her as old then, period. I wouldn't say it that way now. But Alma, I only met her a few times, and it ingrained in me. In our conversations at one point, she was quite sick, and she was truly going to be dying. Well, I guess we all are, but she was going to be dying soon. And she made a comment about the ace in the hole, and I kind of looked at her and I said, "What?" And in this deep South drawl, she said to me, "The ace in the hole. There's always one. You just got to look for it." And that is so stuck with me. That attitude that there is, or there almost always is, an ace in the hole. I feel like that takes most of us a lifetime to learn. Our plate collection for this fall will be shared with 3 organizations focused on food security. The first is Seed Change, formerly known as the Unitarian Service Committee, which works to support farmers and protect biodiversity. Food Stash and Quest Food Exchange both collect food, which would otherwise go to waste, and it redistributes them to needy individuals or organizations. Please give as generously as you're able. Please, ushers, could you now prepare to take the offering? That was beautiful. Thank you. And to the ushers, thank you for collecting the offering, for these gifts, and for all that we do to weave this tapestry of love that we call community. We are grateful. Thank you.
So we have a moment for all ages. That is, yep. You better? Is that better? And when Bruce let me know that we were going to be talking about our ancestors, and I thought, I have a story about my grandmother, my Nana, my dad's mom, and thanks, Andy. There we go. And three of my grandparents that I knew served in some way during the Second World War. But my dad's mom, who was Dutch, and she lived in occupied Netherlands for the duration of the war. And her stories always inspired me. So the plaque, so this is a picture of her about 1936, so she would have been about 16 years old. Her name was, and she hated this name, Arnolda Wilhelmina Charlotta Hout, and she went by Nancy. She, in her family, and perhaps this is a Dutch tradition, she was given a nickname when she was born, so that she actually never used her official names. She was always Nancy. And this plaque, I've taken that with me. I own that plaque. It is a commemoration of Operation Manna, which was the food drop to the Netherlands in 1945, just ahead of the liberation. And my Nana had to make choices. When she was 19, the war was declared, and in fact, that same year, both her parents died. And so she was a 19-year-old orphan in a war. And she lived with her aunts, and her strength and the courage that it took her to make some choices always inspired me. The house that her and her aunts lived in was taken over by German officers, and they were expecting that her and her aunts would just leave with the clothes on their back. And my Nana said to them, no, we're taking what we need, we're taking what we want, we're taking our important things. So as a 20-year-old woman, she stood up to those invading officers, which is something I have never had to do and I never want to do, but I appreciate that story and that strength of character. She chose to become a nurse trainee, not because she wanted to be a nurse. She actually wanted to be an actress, but she chose that because the food rations were better at the hospital. She knew that she would eat if she was working at the hospital. And when the war came to an end, she made the choice to marry a Canadian soldier and move to Ontario, not because she was particularly in love with this Canadian soldier. In fact, she had lost the love of her life to that war, but because she knew that there would be food, there would be money, there would be work, there would be a life in Canada. And she made some very hard choices. And I've never had to make really hard choices like that. But when I was very young and I was a single mother on student loans or on welfare, I knew that I was making choices for myself, for my family, and that those were hard choices. But I knew that there were people who loved me. There was a reason to make those choices, and it was always my Nana who I thought of when I had to make those hard choices. I was very lucky to have her until I was in my early 30s, not all of us, and that my daughter actually knew my Nana. And I'm wondering if there are some folks who maybe have a brief story to share about something that you've learned from your grandparents or another relative that you hold with you, another ancestor that you hold with you. Anyone? that's all right. We have this month, and we have coffee to share our stories with one another, and I hope that we do. I hope that we think of our ancestors, and sometimes they made hard choices, and perhaps not the choices we would have made, but perhaps they have lessons to teach us. And now the children can come for a snack, and we'll be back just at the end of our service. We'll sing them out.
Yeah, it's hard. Everybody has a story like Laura was asking for, but it's hard to come up with that at the spur of the moment. So I hope people share those at coffee time. All right, I'm going to tell you that a few years ago, I got a call out of the blue from a guy in Toronto. He said his name was Ken, and he said, "You don't know me, but I just wanted to tell you, really like the Olga book." And he was talking about a book called What Makes Olga Run, which is about a 90-something-year-old track star from West Van. And he said, yeah, great book, good job. And he said, you should do your next book on my father. He's just like Olga. He said, he's fit and trim, just like her. And I said, that's great, Ken. Good for him. I should tell you, I actually get a fair number of calls like this from people who think they know the next Olga Kotelko, and it's usually a family member, and I usually try to sort of delicately decline and sort of politely encourage them, but not get involved. And he said, no, he's great. He every morning he lifts weights and he grinds out 30 minutes on the stationary bike. And I said, that's great, Ken. Good for him. He said, yeah. He's 108. All right, now you've got my attention, Ken. I said, it's like, where does he live, and is he free on Thursday? So it turns out that this man, this 108-year-old man, lives in Montreal, and coincidentally just within walking distance of my mother-in-law. So next time Jen and I went to visit her, I trudged up the hill, and I went to meet Dr. Robert Wiener. Big welcome from him, bone-crushing handshake. Call me Bob, he says. And the first thing he does is he shows me his exercise routine. I don't know if you saw the guy on the exercise bike at the beginning. That was Bob, 108 years old. So he showed me how he grinds it out there. And then we sit down for lunch, and that's when I learn about the bet. See, Bob had an older brother named David, and when the two men were in their 90s, they made a wager. David said, we're closing in on the century mark here, man, but I don't think we need to stop there. I think we should go for 110. He said, let's do it. Let's shake on it. And they did. Whoever makes it to 110 wins. So. Now, I should say here, just by way of context, that the odds of living to 110 are roughly 1 in 6 million. The odds of two brothers both living to 110, well, we don't know because it's never happened. There have been a couple of sisters, but no brothers, because men don't live as long. Anyway, older brother David breaks the trail. He hits 100 years old. And now I should also tell you that once you hit 100, just statistically, your odds of dying within the following year are about 50-50, a coin flip every year after that. Yet, on went David. He hits 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, heads every year. And then a month shy of his 110th birthday, David dies. So mixed feelings for Bob. He's lost his beloved brother, but the bet's still alive. So Bob and I polished off our lunch. And then we stepped into the Wayback Machine, and I said, Bob, what's your earliest memory? And he thought about it. He recalled sitting in a school classroom knitting towels for the soldiers in the war, the First World War. There was no mass media back then. Radio didn't arrive till Bob was 12, so there wasn't much to do but go play outside. So furious street hockey games in front of the Wiener's place. Play was halted not when some kid shouted, "Car!" but when he shouted, "Horse!" Bob was in his 20s before women were made persons under the law in Canada. Okay. So his first job, we started talking about his work. He was a dentist, an oral surgeon actually, first in Chicago and then in Montreal. And he actually seemed to remember pretty much every patient who came through his door and sat in his chair. Like the man who showed up one day in 1946, balding fellow, so short his feet didn't quite reach the end of the chair. And this guy was something of a medical mystery. He'd gradually been losing sight until he was totally blind in one eye. And this hampered his work, building the first nuclear reactor and bringing humans into the atomic age. It was Enrico Fermi. Bob took x-rays and then extracted an abscessed molar that was pressing on the optic nerve, and voila, the great scientist could see again. 4 years later, another guy plops down into Bob's chair. This guy's in his mid-70s, rimless glasses, gray push broom mustache. He's complaining of a toothache, lower molar on the left. Wait, just like the character in his novel Buddenbrook. So this is Thomas Mann, the greatest German novelist of the 20th century, who was welcomed to the West because he was fighting the Nazis. Anyway, Bob fills Thomas Mann's molar. Thomas Mann, in gratitude, gives Bob a signed copy of The Magic Mountain, the one he won the Nobel Prize for. And then strangely, Thomas Mann has not spoken a lick of English to this point. He's been communicating through an interpreter. But now the procedure's open. He gets up, extends his hand, and says in perfect English, "Thank you very much, Dr. Wiener." We don't know why. And then there was a patient in Chicago who Bob treated not in his office, but down the road at the state penitentiary. Bob did pro bono work on inmates. And this fellow was serving 99 years plus life. He was spared execution only by the brilliant defense of his lawyer, Clarence Darrow. So this was Nathan Leopold of Leopold and Loeb, the notorious pair of university students who murdered a 14-year-old boy just to see what that felt like. And they considered themselves so smart they were beyond the rule of law. So Leopold spoke 15 languages, but with Bob he only needed the one. After Bob told him his teeth were in such bad shape they'd probably all have to come out, Leopold's mask of sophistication fell away, and a little bit pathetically he said, "Doc, you really got to blow them all?" So I'm hearing this, and all I can think of is that movie Zelig. Did you ever see that? About a guy nondescript guy who blunders into just about every pivotal moment in history. And I'm thinking, Bob, this is like Zelig. But Bob's not done yet. He tells me about the patient who arrived one day in his Montreal office who was so handsome the receptionist was swooning. Impeccable three-piece suit, fine manners, and a bodyguard. So this was Vincenzo the Egg Catroni, godfather of Montreal, capo for the Bonanno crime syndicate. And this was at a time that the mob was running amok and corruption was so rampant in big North American cities it felt like justice itself was on the line, that there was no guarantee that good would triumph over evil. The Egg paid cash and tipped Bob's assistant on the way out. So a picture's forming in my mind at this point. Here's this dentist standing there by his little spit sink at the still center of the 20th century while the whole project of modernity revolves around him. And I said, "Bob, this is incredible. How many people have you told this to?" He shrugged and said, "A couple." You know, I sometimes feel like I'm the luckiest person on earth. You know, I rarely have $3 at the same time, but I'm rich in the sense that I get to meet people like this. I get to write about very old folks, and that means I get to hold history in a sense. And what I came to realize with Bob was that he was entrusting me with the stewardship of his story. And if I didn't do something with it, it would just kind of wink out of existence. So we talked for another hour or so, and then I could tell he was starting to get tired. So I shut off the tape recorder and I began to gather up my stuff, and he said, "That was great, let's do it again." And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Next summer, same time, same place." I said, "Penciling it in," I said. And we did meet, and we had an even better visit next time, and now we were fast friends. So 2 months later, Bob turns 110, thereby winning the bet. There's a burger joint in downtown Montreal that Bob liked, and I said, "Let's go there next. I'll call you." And he nods. But this time, the magic sparkle is kind of gone from his eyes, and he says quietly, "Don't wait too long." On February 17th, 2019, Bob Vanier died. I cold pitched the obituary of him to the Globe and Mail. They put it on the front page, "Canada's oldest man dies." But they put it below the fold, a human interest story to balance out the real news up top, because this is sweet, but ultimately not that important. Because really, what had Dr. Robert Vanier actually done except to stay above ground for a really long time? 110 years, 113 days. He and David, the two oldest brothers who ever lived. But who cares? Now, it's hard to say this without sounding like Captain Obvious, but we live in a culture that's obsessed with youth, a culture that champions youth. And as a youth advisor here, and a father to two teenage daughters, part of me goes, "Yeah, man, go youth. I'm on team youth." But the flip side is that as much as we value our youth, we kind of undervalue our elders. Sometimes I would say to the point of flat out disrespect. And it's strange, because with all the progress we're starting to make in rooting out our discrimination and confronting our own biases, the one group that isn't getting many tummy rubs at all is the elderly. Ageism is the last acceptable prejudice. Even animals get more love, which is wild when you think of it, because this is the one out-group that ultimately we're all going to be in, if we're lucky. So what's going on? What is ageism actually about? Well, you could say that in this culture, if you're not accelerating, you don't actually show up on the radar. Our parents' and grandparents' generation are not accelerating, so they're ghosts, they're relics of the past, they're dinosaurs. Worse, they're the dinosaurs who got us into this mess, because they gave the boomers the idea that it was all limitless. Fill your boots. They broke the planet and left the rest of us to sort of MacGyver a kind of escape plan. But I'm not actually convinced that is what causes ageism. There's a different theory that very old people are mirrors, and we're scared of the us we see in them. Nope, can't handle it, never gonna die, la 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 la. And we turn away. And that may be part of it, but I actually think ageism boils down to something a lot simpler. I think it starts with a language issue. The bridge out here, the empathy gap, is a communication failure. I can tell you that the centenarians, or the near centenarians whom I've had the privilege of writing about, folks like Olga and Bob Vanier, and Ephraim Engelman, who was still practicing medicine at age 105, these people are thoughtful, and they are large-hearted, and they've built tremendous character by enduring things we can't even imagine. But what they aren't is woke, by which I mean they don't have a vocabulary that signals that they're on the right side of all these issues we're struggling so hard with right now. Sometimes they say things that get them into trouble, things that for many progressives are just deal breakers. The assumption is that there must be some pretty retrograde thinking behind language like that. And sometimes there is, but I would argue way less often than you would think. Doesn't matter, the die is cast. We don't cancel our elders exactly, because to cancel something you have to have engaged with it in the first place. We just ignore them. There's a filter people apply, consciously or not, to separate those worth listening to from those who are just kind of in the way. And old people kind of sometimes don't make it through that filter, and that means neither does whatever wisdom they have to offer. Nobody becomes the steward of that wisdom, and it just winks out of existence. Our oldest elders are like a Rosetta stone nobody can be bothered to decipher. Another name for that is a rock. Now, I'm generalizing a bit, obviously. There are some elders, some recently passed, whom we do really respect and kind of hold up as oracles or roadmaps, like RBG, Toni Morrison, Ursula Le Guin. And getting back to our earlier question, it's also true that just because you wrap the odometer doesn't automatically make you super wise and judicious. I got to interview Jean Vanier a few years ago when he was near the end of his life. He created l'Arche, the Ark, one of the great social experiments of our time. I don't know if you're familiar with them, probably. It's a network of little villages in 37 countries where people with intellectual disabilities live in community with neurotypical folks so that each can learn from the other, each can feed the other, literally and figuratively. And Jean Vanier had the reputation of being almost a living saint. And I've got to admit, when I hung up the phone with him, I had the chills. I felt I had been wrapped in something absolutely holy. And we now know that Jean Vanier was a very flawed individual, just like the rest of us. So I guess the moral is that people are complicated. Be careful who you put on a pedestal. But maybe also be careful who you knock off a pedestal, because judgments like that tend to come back and bite us in the butt. There's this thing called the overview effect. I learned about it while working on a story for Popular Science magazine years ago. It's something astronauts experience the first time they look back on the whole Earth. It's like, there it is, this one bright thing in the darkness, like a shining globe, except there are no countries, there are no borders, and just this paper-thin atmosphere keeping the show going on this very finite rock we're all huddled up on. Astronauts see that, and it changes them. They come back different. And because where they've been we can't go, at least not yet, we can't know the overview effect except through their attempts to describe it and by their behavior back here on Earth ever after. And I'm going somewhere with this metaphor, honestly. I feel like very old people have their own kind of overview effect going, except that the perspective that we can't know except through them comes not from distance, but from time. But it's basically the same endowment. They see patterns we don't see. And they see a kind of borderlessness that we don't. And that perspective, all these data points collected over a long, long lifetime, is a rare thing, a valuable thing that we need now more than ever. Because when everybody's going, oh my God, we're screwed, people have lost their minds, this is Armageddon, we need the voices of experience to pipe up and go, yeah, this is bad. But I remember 1968 and 1962 and 1939 and 1930, and that was bad too. But we squeaked through, right? We found a way to de-escalate tensions and sort of navigate the painful, necessary paradigm shifts. And we did it because this is our dodge. Humans are resilient in kind of a predictable way, you know? Again and again, there are surges of righteous anger that change the world, but before they do, they swish and slosh, and there's often a low water mark before there's a high one. And the moment the tide turns is usually the moment when we start really listening to each other again. My kids tell me they aren't making too many firm plans beyond like age 25 because they aren't super confident that a habitable world is still going to be here. The centenarians are more optimistic. They think we have it in us to figure this out, and my money's on them. Thank you.
Well, we're a very busy congregation, about as busy as those footsteps that just came up and rejoined us. There are lots of announcements. They're all in the e-bulletin. There's an upcoming art sale. There's youth group tonight. Homemade chocolate chip cookies by Kit. And Sophia. The stewardship campaign is underway. Inward Bound is a meeting Leslie Gibbons is hosting next Saturday morning. Contact her for more details. Lots going on. And a special message from Reverend Ron. He's going to host some Q&A and discernment discussions about this 8th principle that we're going to have a congregational meeting about on the 21st, and then the CUC delegates are actually going to vote the week following in the meeting to accept, to adopt, or reject that principle. And Ron's going to run 3 Q&A sessions on Zoom over the 16th and the 17th of November, 1 hour. These are Ron's words. This is a historic moment that will have immediate and long-term effects on Unitarianism in Canada and in our congregation. It's kind of a big deal, and it's good to be careful. So those are Ron's words. Next week's service is on covenant and principle. All right, last thoughts. We just want to give a special welcome to anyone who's new today, whether you're here with us in the congregation or at home. We just want you to know how welcome you are to be with us. We'd love you to sign the tablet in the iPad in the lobby, or if you're at home, you can click on the YouTube channel. There's a how to sign up for our newsletter. We're glad you're here. If you have any questions about our congregation, there's any one of us would happily answer, and the special answers available from our greeters, those folks wearing greeter buttons. And after the service, after our spirit zones, we welcome everyone back into the fireside room for some coffee and tea and bagels, and maybe more conversation about those lessons from our ancestors. So let's send forth our flame. We extinguish this flame, but carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. The world calls with us. It calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. We go forth with courage and love.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to be with you today. Go out into the world in peace, knowing that you are absolutely held and cherished by this community. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching. Good stuff down there.